Let me tell you about the most expensive mistake Alejandro Salvatore ever made. 50,000 euros for a homeless girl at a human auction. Sounds simple, right? Except the girl was FBI royalty in hiding. The auction was a trap. And the 50,000? Pocket change for a man who secretly owned half of Italy. The auction house in Naples smelled like expensive cigars and cheap desperation. Dim red lighting cast shadows across the faces of dangerous men in 1,000-euro suits, their eyes hungry, their morals negotiable. This was the kind of place that didn't exist on any map. The kind of place where fortunes were bought and sold along with human lives, and no one asked questions because no one wanted answers. A spotlight hit the stage. Zariyah Williams stood in the harsh white beam, 22 years old, wearing a thin dress that had seen better days, her hands bound in front of her, but her chin was up. Her dark eyes scanned the room full of predators without a trace of fear, without a hint of the begging these men expected. She wasn't calculating her chances of escape. She was calculating which one of them had what she needed. 6 months she'd been planning this moment. 6 months living on Rome's streets, invisible and watching, learning the patterns of the Salvatore family's operation. 6 months of cold nights and empty stomachs and surveillance that would have made her father proud. Every conversation overheard, every face memorized, every move mapped in that photographic memory her father had trained her to use like a weapon. The auctioneer, a thin man with dead eyes and expensive rings, raised his gavel. "Gentlemen, our final lot of the evening. American girl. No family, no connections, no one will look for her. Starting bid, 20,000 euros. Silence filled the room. These men were calculating, weighing value against risk, desire against discretion. Zariyah's heart pounded, but her face remained impassive. This had to work. Everything depended on one specific man making one specific choice. Then, from the shadows at the back of the room, a voice cut through the smoke-filled air. Deep, controlled, dangerous. 50,000 euros. Every head turned. Alejandro Salvatore stepped into the light like a king entering his throne room, despite the cheap suit that hung on his frame. Despite the fact that everyone in this room believed he was bankrupt, a disgrace, the Salvatore heir who'd lost everything in an FBI raid 3 years ago. He moved with the kind of confidence that money couldn't buy and poverty couldn't break. Zariyah's eyes locked with his across the distance. Electric. The air between them crackled with something neither could name. Recognition without understanding, challenge without words. She thought she was hunting him. He'd been protecting her for 6 months. Neither knew the other's truth. Both were convinced they were the predator. They were both about to learn they were the prey. The auctioneer's gavel came down with a sound like a gunshot. Sold to Mr. Salvatore. Alejandro approached the stage, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Up close, Zariyah could see the sharp lines of his face, the dark eyes that seemed to see too much, the hands that looked like they could break her or cradle her with equal ease. He extended one hand to help her down from the platform. "You're coming with me." Zariyah met his gaze without flinching, without the submission he probably expected. A small smile played at the corner of her lips. "We'll see about that." Their hands touched. The shock of contact ran through both of them like lightning. For half a second, the auction house, the watching men, the entire world fell away. There was only this moment, this touch, this impossible pull toward a stranger who felt like destiny. Then Zariyah's fingers moved with practiced precision, dipping into the inside pocket of his jacket as he helped her down. 2.3 seconds. That's all it took to steal the envelope containing 50,000 euros. She'd learned pickpocketing from a street artist in Rome during her second week of homelessness. Survival had many teachers. If you enjoyed this opening, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next, because Zariyah's about to make a run for it, and Alejandro, he's about to make a choice that changes both their lives forever. Now, let's rewind 6 months to understand how we got here. 6 months earlier, Washington, D.C. looked like every postcard promised it would. Cherry blossoms drifting on spring air, the Capitol dome gleaming white in morning sun. The kind of picture-perfect morning that made you believe in the promise of America, in justice, in happy endings. Zariyah Williams didn't believe in happy endings anymore. Her phone rang at 6:17 a.m., shattering sleep she'd barely found. She was in her small apartment near Georgetown, surrounded by FBI Academy textbooks and her father's old case files that she studied like gospel. At 22, she was following in James Williams' footsteps, determined to be the kind of agent who made a difference, who saved lives, who mattered. She answered on the second ring, still foggy with sleep. "Hello? Miss Williams?" The voice was official. Careful. The kind of careful that precedes terrible news. "This is Officer Chen with the Metro Police. I'm calling about your father, Special Agent James Williams." Zariyah's hand tightened on the phone. Her father had left for a classified meeting the night before. He'd kissed her forehead, told her to study hard, promised to bring home Thai food for dinner. What about him? The pause lasted 3 seconds. 3 seconds that rewrote Zariyah's entire world. "I'm sorry to inform you that your father is dead. Apparent suicide. His body was found in his car this morning near..." The rest of the words disappeared into white noise. Zariyah's legs gave out. She sank to the floor, back against the wall. Phone pressed to her ear, but hearing nothing, understanding nothing except one impossible truth. Her father was dead. James Williams, legendary FBI agent, the man who'd taken down 3 major mafia families, who'd never met a case he couldn't solve or a wrong he wouldn't right. Dead. Suicide, they said. They were lying. Zariyah knew her father better than anyone. She'd spent her entire life watching him work, learning his methods, absorbing his passion for justice. James Williams didn't give up, ever, on cases, on people, on life. Whatever had killed him, it wasn't despair, it was murder. The funeral was 3 days later, small, private. FBI colleagues who looked uncomfortable in their grief, who said the right things with wrong eyes, who left quickly as if death might be contagious. Zariyah stood by the grave in a black dress bought the day before, watching them lower her father into the ground, and made a promise over his casket. She would find out who killed him, and she would make them pay. The apartment felt wrong without him. Too quiet. Too empty. Zariyah moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching his things, trying to hold on to the feeling of him. His coffee mug still in the sink, his reading glasses on the side table, his jacket hanging by the door, smelling like his cologne and the peppermints he always carried. She couldn't live here anymore. Every corner held his absence like an accusation. But before she left, she had to know, had to understand what he'd been working on that got him killed. The FBI had already swept his official office, taking everything classified, leaving nothing but empty drawers and dust. But James Williams had been too smart to keep all his secrets in official places. Zariyah went to his apartment at 2 a.m, using the spare key she'd had since she was 16. Crime scene tape still crossed the door. She ducked under it, picked the lock. another skill her father had taught her, supposedly for emergencies, and slipped inside. The apartment was a disaster. Not naturally messy. Searched. Someone had gone through everything, pulling out drawers, rifling through papers, looking for something specific. The police wouldn't have done this. They'd ruled it suicide. They weren't investigating, which meant someone else had been here first. Zariyah moved methodically through the apartment, using her photographic memory to catalog what was missing, what was disturbed, what didn't fit. In the living room, books pulled from shelves but left scattered instead of restacked. In the bedroom, mattress slightly askew, closet doors open. In his office, filing cabinet drawers hanging open like screaming mouths. They'd been thorough. But they hadn't known James Williams the way his daughter did. She went to his desk, an old oak piece he'd inherited from his own father. Ran her hands along the underside, feeling for the catch he'd shown her once when she was 12. If anything ever happens to me, baby girl, check here first. Her fingers found the hidden release. A false bottom dropped open. Inside, a single envelope. Her name written in her father's distinctive handwriting. Zariyah Williams. Her hand shook as she opened it. Inside, a handwritten note on his FBI letterhead. Her father's words. His last words to her. Zariyah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Not suicide. Don't believe them. Enzo Salvatore killed me. He discovered Operation Shadow, my investigation into his trafficking network. I had enough evidence to bring down his entire organization, but someone inside the bureau is working for him. Someone I trusted. They told him about my investigation, about the evidence, about you. I couldn't let him get to you. You're all I have left of your mother. You're everything good in this world. Find the compass. It's hidden somewhere in Enzo's possession, taken during the FBI raid on the Salvatore family 3 years ago. The compass proves everything. His crimes, his network, the trafficking operations. More importantly, it contains your inheritance. 500 million euros your mother and I hid in offshore accounts before she died. The compass is the key. Your birthmark is the biological lock. Only you can open it. Find Il Ombra, the shadow. He's been working with me for 3 years, helping take down trafficking rings. Everyone thinks he's a criminal. He's not. He's the only person I trust to protect you now. His real name is Alejandro Salvatore, Enzo's nephew. Yes, a Salvatore. I know how that sounds. But trust him, Zariyah. He's a good man trapped in a bad family. He gave me his word he'd keep you safe if anything happened to me. Go to Naples, find Alejandro. He'll help you get the compass. Use the evidence to finish what I started. Bring Enzo to justice. Save the lives I couldn't save. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from this. I'm sorry I'm not there to walk you down the aisle someday, to meet your children, to see the incredible woman I know you'll become. But you were always stronger than you knew. Your mother gave you her heart. I gave you my mind. Together, that makes you unstoppable. I love you, baby girl. Make me proud. Finish this, Dad. Zariyah read the letter 3 times, committing every word to memory, then burned it in the kitchen sink the way her father had taught her. Never leave evidence. The ashes swirled down the drain like black snow. 3 names, 1 mission, 1 chance. Enzo Salvatore, the man who killed her father. Il Ombra, the shadow, her father's secret ally, and the compass, the key to everything. Zariyah made her decision standing in her dead father's kitchen at 3 a.m. She would sell everything she owned, buy a one-way ticket to Italy, find the compass, bring down Enzo Salvatore, and finish her father's mission, whatever the cost. She didn't know yet that the cost would be falling in love with the one man she was supposed to destroy. The next 6 months were a blur of transformation. Zariyah Williams, FBI Academy student, disappeared. In her place, a homeless American woman materialized on the streets of Rome, invisible and desperate. It wasn't an act. She made it real. She sold her apartment, her car, everything her father had left her except his FBI pin and her mother's locket. Bought the cheapest flight to Rome she could find. Landed with $2,000, a backpack, and a mission that would either save her or destroy her. Rome welcomed her with indifference. The city had seen countless lost souls drift through its ancient streets. One more made no difference. Zariyah learned the rules of homelessness quickly: where to sleep without getting robbed, where to find food without begging, where to wash without being chased away, how to be invisible while seeing everything. The homeless were ghosts in the city's machine. No one looked at them. No one saw them, which made them perfect witnesses. She positioned herself strategically, choosing locations based on 3 months of research into the Salvatore family's operations, near their businesses, outside their restaurants, in alleys adjacent to their meeting places, and she watched, listened, remembered. Her photographic memory became her greatest weapon. Every conversation overheard, every face that passed, every pattern in their movements, she cataloged it all, building a mental map of the entire Salvatore operation. Who reported to whom? Which businesses were fronts? Where they met? What they discussed when they thought no one was listening? Because no one was listening. Except the homeless girl in the doorway with dirt on her face and brilliance in her eyes. She learned Italian from listening, picking up the language with the same photographic precision she applied to everything else. Within 2 months, she spoke fluent Italian with a Neapolitan accent. By month 3, she could navigate the city's criminal underworld as easily as its tourist districts. She learned about Alejandro Salvatore, the disgraced heir, the bankrupt nephew, the man who'd lost everything in an FBI raid 3 years ago, the raid her father had led. Everyone pitied him. Everyone dismissed him. Everyone believed he was broken. But Zariyah noticed things others missed. The way lower-level criminals still deferred to him, subtle nods and careful words. The expensive watch he wore despite supposedly being destitute. The way he moved through Naples like a man who owned it, not a man begging for scraps. She became obsessed with him. Because if anyone knew where the compass ended up after the FBI raid, it would be Alejandro Salvatore. And if her father trusted him, there had to be a reason. She needed to get close to him. But how? A homeless woman couldn't just approach a mafia heir, disgraced or not. Then she learned about the auctions. Underground human auctions where desperate people sold themselves to pay debts they couldn't escape. Where the mafia bought and sold lives like commodities. Where someone like Alejandro Salvatore might shop for, what? Servants? Assets? She didn't know. But she knew he attended them occasionally. She'd followed him to 3 in as many months. So Zariyah did something either brilliantly strategic or absolutely insane. She borrowed money from a loan shark. A lot of money. Money she had no intention of repaying. Money that came with the kind of interest rate that ensured default. Money that would force her into exactly one place. The auction. She engineered her own sale, made herself valuable enough to buy, but desperate enough to be believable. An American woman, alone, homeless, with nowhere to go and no one to help. Perfect bait. And when the loan shark's men came to collect, When they dragged her to that auction house in Naples, when they pushed her onto that stage under harsh lights, Zariyah wasn't afraid. She was exactly where she'd planned to be. Now she just needed Alejandro Salvatore to take the bait. The auction house backstage smelled like fear and resignation. Zariyah waited with 7 other people, 5 women, 2 men, all being sold to pay debts or crimes or simple bad luck. None of them spoke. What was there to say? This was rock bottom, the place where hope went to die. Except Zariyah's hope was very much alive. She counted the minutes until her turn, running through the plan one more time. Alejandro would bid. He had to bid. She'd made sure the loan shark mentioned her American background, her education, her potential value. Those details would reach the right ears. Men like Alejandro didn't buy people randomly. They bought assets. The auctioneer called her name. Well, the fake name she'd been using. Lot 17, American female, 22, educated, speaks English and Italian, no family or connections. Zariyah walked onto that stage like she was walking onto a battlefield. And in many ways, she was. The spotlight hit her eyes, blinding after the darkness backstage. She couldn't see the audience clearly, just shapes and shadows and the glow of cigarettes. But she felt their eyes on her, assessing, calculating, deciding her worth like she was livestock. Her hands were bound, but her spine was straight. Let them see strength, not submission. Let them see someone worth buying. Starting bid, 20,000 euros. Silence. Long, agonizing silence that stretched for 5 full seconds. Zariyah's heart pounded. This had to work. Everything depended on this moment. Then, from the back of the room, that voice. 50,000 euros. Relief flooded through her so intense she nearly swayed on her feet. He'd taken the bait. Alejandro Salvatore had just bought her. Phase 1 complete. Now came the hard part. Making him believe she was exactly what she appeared to be while searching for the compass. Getting close enough to find what she needed while keeping emotional distance from a man her father trusted. How hard could it be? The answer, as it turned out, was very hard. Because when Alejandro Salvatore reached up to help her down from that stage, when their hands touched and electricity shot through her entire body, when she looked into his dark eyes and saw something that looked almost like recognition, Zariyah realized she'd made a critical error in her calculations. She hadn't accounted for chemistry. The auction house had a back room where transactions were finalized, paperwork signing, money exchanging hands, the transfer of human property like it was legal, like it was normal, like this was how the world worked. Zariyah stood to the side while the auctioneer presented Alejandro with documents and a small key. For the restraints, the man said with a smile that made Zariyah want to break his teeth. She's yours now. Do what you want with her. Alejandro's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He took the key, took the papers, signed with quick, efficient movements. Then he approached Zariyah, who'd been calculating angles this entire time. Exit door, 37 feet. Window, 2nd floor, 18-foot drop but survivable. Alejandro's jacket pocket, 50,000 euros creating a visible bulge. His attention, divided between paperwork and the auctioneer. This was her chance. I'm going to remove these now, Alejandro said softly, carefully, like he was talking to a spooked animal. He unlocked the restraints on her wrists. His fingers brushed her skin. That electricity again. Stronger this time. Don't run. Zariyah met his eyes. Dark. Intense. Surprisingly kind for a mafia heir. Why would I run? The lie tasted like honey on her tongue. The moment her hands were free, her training kicked in. The pickpocket technique she'd learned on the streets, 2.3 seconds. His jacket pocket, the envelope, into her dress bodice, smooth, professional, perfect. Alejandro turned to take the paperwork from the auctioneer. For half a second, his eyes narrowed, his head tilted, like he'd felt something. Then the moment passed. He turned back to her, extending his hand. "Shall we?" Zariyah took his hand, hiding her shock that he hadn't caught her. His palm was warm, calloused, strong. The kind of hand that had worked for its power, not inherited it. "Lead the way." They walked through the auction house toward the exit. Zariyah's mind raced through the next phase. Outside, to his car, then run. She knew these streets. She'd spent 6 months mapping every alley, every escape route, every hiding place. Once she got free of him, he'd never find her in Naples' maze. The night air hit her face like freedom. Cool, clean, the promise of escape. Alejandro's car waited at the curb, an old Fiat. Nothing fancy, further proof of his supposed bankruptcy. He moved to open the passenger door. Zariyah ran. She took off down the nearest alley, full sprint, the 50,000 euros pressed against her ribs, her heart pounding with exhilaration and terror. Behind her, she heard Alejandro's voice, sharp with surprise. "Wait." But she didn't wait. She ran like her. Life depended on it, diving into the narrow streets she'd memorized over months of surveillance. Left at the corner, right through the market district, straight through the residential area. She knew every turn, every shortcut, every place to hide. 3 blocks away, she stopped in a shadowed doorway, breathing hard, listening for pursuit. Nothing. Strange. She'd expected him to chase her. Men like Alejandro Salvatore didn't let 50,000 euros walk away without a fight. But the street behind her was empty, silent, too silent. Zariyah pressed deeper into the shadows, making herself small, invisible again. She waited 5 minutes, 10, 15. Still nothing. Finally, she emerged from her hiding spot and made her way to one of her regular sleeping locations, an abandoned building near the port district. It wasn't much. Broken windows, graffitied walls, the smell of seawater and decay. But it was hers. One of 7 spots she rotated through to avoid being tracked. She pulled the envelope from her dress, hands shaking with adrenaline and victory. 50,000 euros. 6 months of planning paying off in one perfect heist. She counted the money twice, grinning in the darkness. This would fund her search, buy better equipment, maybe even pay for information about the compass's location. Then reality set in. She'd just stolen from a mafia heir, even a disgraced one. There would be consequences. He'd be looking for her. She'd have to be more careful, move her sleeping spots more frequently, avoid the areas she knew he frequented. But it was worth it. For the first time in 6 months, she had resources, leverage, a chance. Zariyah tucked the money into her hidden bag, a waterproof container she kept buried near each sleeping location, and settled against the wall for the night. Tomorrow, she'd start phase 2 of her plan. Finding the compass, getting close to the Salvatore family, learning their secrets. Tonight, she'd enjoy her victory. She closed her eyes, exhaustion finally catching up to her. Sleep came quickly on the streets when you were tired enough. She'd learned to sleep anywhere, through noise, through fear, through the constant awareness that danger could arrive at any moment. What she didn't know was that danger was already watching. 3 blocks away, in a coffee shop with a clear view of her abandoned building, Alejandro Salvatore sat with an untouched espresso and a direct sightline to where Zariyah had disappeared. He'd watched her run, watched her check for pursuit, watched her think she'd escaped. He could have stopped her, should have stopped her. But something had held him back. The defiance in her eyes, the precision of her theft, the way she moved through Naples like she owned it despite being homeless. This was James Williams' daughter. It had to be. The timing was too perfect. American woman. FBI agent's background, though she'd hidden it. Appearing in Naples 6 months after James's death. Engineering her way into an auction Alejandro was known to attend. She was hunting him. Or hunting something he had. James had mentioned a compass, evidence hidden during the raid. Something about offshore accounts. Alejandro pulled out his phone, texted his most trusted guard. "Follow the American girl. Don't let her see you. If anyone approaches her, eliminate the threat. She doesn't get hurt." The response came immediately. "Understood, boss." Alejandro had made a promise to a dying man. James Williams had called him 30 minutes before Enzo killed him, voice tight with fear but steady with purpose. "Protect my daughter. She'll come looking for answers. Keep her alive, Alejandro. Please. She's all I have left." Alejandro had given his word, and he kept his promises, even when they came from men he respected more than his own family. He took a sip of cold espresso, watching the building where Zariyah slept, and wondered if she had any idea how much danger she was in. Enzo knew James Williams had a daughter. He'd been searching for her for 6 months. And if Enzo found her before Alejandro could convince her to trust him, the thought made his jaw clench. He'd failed enough people in his life, built an empire on blood and secrets, spent 3 years trying to make up for the damage his family had caused. He wouldn't fail James Williams, which meant he couldn't fail this stubborn, brilliant, reckless woman who thought she was hunting him. Tomorrow he'd find her again, offer her a deal. Protection in exchange for... what? He'd figure it out. Maybe the truth. Maybe just her trust. For tonight, he'd make sure she survived. Alejandro finished his espresso, left money on the table, and walked out into the Naples night. His guards were already in position around her building, invisible in the shadows, protecting a woman who didn't know she needed protection. Because Zariyah Williams had been right about one thing. She'd found exactly who she was looking for at that auction. She'd just been wrong about which one of them was the hunter. The next 3 days were a master class in paranoia and survival. Zariyah moved through Naples like a ghost, changing locations every 6 hours, sleeping in 2-hour increments, constantly checking for tails. She'd stolen from a mafia heir. She should be hunted, chased, threatened. Instead, nothing. No one came after her. No threats, no violence, no angry mafia enforcers demanding their boss's money back. Just silence. It was wrong. All wrong. On day 2, she watched from across a piazza as 3 loan sharks approached the cafe where she'd been sitting 10 minutes earlier. They spread out searching, clearly looking for someone. Looking for her. But before they could get close, they all collapsed. Just dropped like puppets with cut strings. Zariyah's trained eyes caught the small darts in their necks. Tranquilizers, professional, military grade. Someone was protecting her. The only question was who. She had her suspicions. They all pointed to the same impossible answer. Alejandro Salvatore. But why? Why would a man she'd just robbed protect her instead of punish her? It made no sense unless her father had been telling the truth. Unless Alejandro really was working with James Williams. Unless he'd been protecting her this whole time, not from a distance, but from the shadows, waiting for her to make her move. The thought should have made her feel safer. Instead, it made her angry. She didn't need protecting. She didn't need some mafia heir playing white knight because he'd made a promise to her dead father. She needed answers. She needed the compass. She needed to finish what her father started. She needed to stop running and start hunting. On day 3, Zariyah made a decision. She'd go to him, confront Alejandro Salvatore directly, demand answers, force him to tell her where the compass was, what her father's plan had been, why he was protecting her instead of hunting her. She just had to find him first. That turned out to be surprisingly easy, because on the night of day 3, exhausted and paranoid and running on fumes, Zariyah collapsed in an abandoned building near the Port District, different from her previous locations, but familiar enough for comfort, and let her guard down for the first time in 72 hours. She fell asleep against a wall, her stolen 50,000 euros pressed against her side like a security blanket, and for 2 whole hours she slept without dreaming. When she opened her eyes, Alejandro Salvatore was standing 10 feet away. Zariyah was on her feet in an instant, knife in hand from her boot, heart pounding. "Don't come any closer." He raised both hands, showing them empty, his posture non-threatening despite the fact that he could probably disarm her in 3 moves. "I'm not here to hurt you." "Right. You just bought me at a human auction for fun." "I bought you to save your life." The words hung in the air between them. Zariyah's knife didn't lower, but confusion crossed her face. "What?" "Enzo Salvatore has a kill order on you. Has had it for 6 months since your father died." Alejandro's voice was calm, matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. "His men have been searching for James Williams' daughter. I had to find you first." Her hand tightened on the knife. "How do you know who my father was?" "Because I knew James Williams." Something softened in Alejandro's expression, something almost like grief. "And before he died, he asked me to protect you." "You expect me to believe that? An FBI agent asked a mafia heir to protect his daughter?" "Your father and I had an understanding." "What kind of understanding?" "The kind I can't explain standing in an abandoned building at 3 a.m. while you're waving a knife at me." Zariyah studied him with the intensity her father had taught her, reading micro-expressions, body language, the tiny tells that separated truth from lies. Alejandro's stance was open, his hands still visible, his eyes direct, without the sliding calculation of a liar. He was telling the truth, at least part of it. "Why should I believe you?" "Because you're still alive. Those 3 loan sharks who came after you 2 days ago, you saw them drop. Tranquilizer darts. My men. The guards who followed you from the auction? Mine. The reason no one from Enzo's organization has found you despite the fact that you've been sleeping in the same rotation of 7 locations for 6 months? I've been keeping them away." Zariyah's breath caught. He knew about her locations, all 7. He'd been watching her the entire time. "You've been following me. I've been protecting you. There's a difference." "Is there?" Something flashed in his eyes. Frustration, maybe, or respect for her refusal to be intimidated. "Look, I understand your suspicion. Your father was killed by my uncle. You've spent 6 months on these streets hunting for something. And then I show up and buy you at an auction like your property. None of that inspires trust. Then why are you here? Because those tranquilizer darts won't work forever. Because Enzo is getting closer to finding you. Because if you keep doing this alone, you're going to die." He paused. "And because I made James Williams a promise, I intend to keep it." "What promise?" "To keep his daughter alive long enough for her to finish what he started." The words hit Zariyah like a physical blow. He knew. He knew why she was here, what she was looking for, what her father had been planning. I don't need your help. Actually, you do. Whatever you're searching for, and I have a guess what it is, you won't find it without me. Enzo has it. And getting it back means getting close to him, which means you need protection, resources, and a cover story that won't get you killed immediately. And you're offering that? I'm offering a partnership. Alejandro stepped forward slowly, carefully, making his intentions clear. I have a proposition. Zariyah's knife rose. I'm not interested in 100,000 euros, 6 months. You pretend to be my fiancé. In exchange, I keep you alive, help you find what you're looking for, and when our contract ends, you walk away with enough money to disappear forever. She stared at him. You want me to pretend to be your fiancé? I need the mafia families to think I'm settling down, that I'm not a threat. A fiancé accomplishes that, especially one with no connections, no family, no one who'll ask questions. You mean someone disposable? Something flashed in his eyes. Pain, maybe. I mean someone safe. From them. From Enzo. From all of it. Why? Why what? Why help me? Why make this offer? You could have just let Enzo's men find me. You could have walked away from whatever promise you made to my father. Why do this? Alejandro was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face like he was trying to decide how much truth to tell. Finally, he said, because your father was a good man in a world full of bad ones. Because he gave me a chance to be better than my family. And because, he met her gaze directly, I don't break my promises, especially not to the dead. Zariyah's knife lowered slightly, not sheathed, not trusting, but considering. What are the terms? You live in my apartment. We appear together at family functions. You play the loving fiancé in public. In private, you can hate me all you want. Sleeping arrangements. Separate bedrooms. And this thing I'm looking for, you'll help me find it? I'll help you get close enough to take it. What you do with it after that is your business. Zariyah studied him for a long moment. Every instinct screamed trap. Every logical calculation said trust was stupid. But something else, something deeper whispered that her father had trusted this man for a reason. And maybe, just maybe, she should too. 6 months. 100,000 euros. I keep the 50,000 I already stole. Alejandro's lips twitched. Almost a smile. You drive a hard bargain. I learned from the best. My father taught me never to accept the first offer. This time he did smile. Full and genuine. He taught you well. Deal. 6 months. 150,000 total, including what you already stole. Keep the 50K. He extended his hand. Zariyah stared at it for 3 long seconds. This was the moment. The choice. Trust or run. Partnership or survival. She took his hand. The electricity that shot through her palm was instant, undeniable, terrifying. They both felt it. Neither acknowledged it. Just held the handshake a beat too long, eyes locked, both sensing that this moment had changed something fundamental between them. When they finally pulled apart, Alejandro cleared his throat. Shall we go? Your new home is waiting. New home? My apartment. Remember, you're my fiancé now. Can't have you sleeping in abandoned buildings. Zariyah looked around at the broken windows, the graffitied walls, the cold concrete that had been her home for 6 months. Part of her wanted to protest. She'd survived this long on her own. She didn't need comfort, didn't need help. But a bigger part of her was tired. So tired. Tired of running. Tired of fighting. Tired of sleeping with one eye open and never feeling safe. Maybe, just for 6 months, she could let someone else carry part of the weight. Fine, she said, sheathing her knife. But if this is a trap, it's not. If it is, she continued, I'll kill you myself. Alejandro's smile was dark, amused. I'd expect nothing less. They walked out of the abandoned building together into the Naples night, neither quite trusting the other, both playing a game they didn't fully understand. Behind them, in the shadows, Alejandro's guards melted away like smoke, their job complete for now. And above them, somewhere in a villa overlooking the city, Enzo Salvatore looked at a surveillance photo of Zariyah Williams, smiled a smile that held no warmth, and made a phone call. I found James Williams' daughter, he said into the phone, and my nephew just brought her directly to us. How convenient. The game was just beginning, and neither Zariyah nor Alejandro had any idea how high the stakes really were. Morning light filtered through unfamiliar windows. Zariyah woke slowly, momentarily disoriented by the softness beneath her. A real bed, clean sheets, the smell of coffee drifting from somewhere beyond the closed door. For half a second, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back. Alejandro's apartment, the deal. 6 months pretending to be engaged to a man she was supposed to be investigating. She sat up, taking in the modest bedroom he'd given her, small but clean, a dresser, a window with actual curtains, luxury compared to cardboard and concrete. After 6 months of sleeping on streets, waking without checking for threats felt surreal. A soft knock. Zariyah, are you awake? She tensed automatically, hand reaching for the knife that wasn't in her boot anymore. Yes. I made breakfast. When you're ready. His footsteps retreated. Zariyah exhaled slowly, trying to settle the anxiety coiling in her chest. This was fine. This was the plan. Get close. Find the compass. Finish the mission. The fact that her heart had stuttered when she heard his voice was irrelevant. She emerged 15 minutes later, having finger-combed her hair and splashed water on her face. The apartment was surprisingly nice for someone supposedly bankrupt. Kitchen that actually functioned. Living room with furniture that matched. Not opulent, but comfortable. Too comfortable for a man who'd lost everything. Alejandro stood at the stove, his back to her, cooking eggs with the kind of easy competence that suggested this wasn't his first time. He'd rolled up his sleeves, and Zariyah found herself staring at his forearms, defined, strong, marked with a thin scar that disappeared under the fabric. Dangerous hands that cooked breakfast. Coffee's ready, he said without turning around. Cups are in the cabinet above the machine. How did you know I heard your door open, and you've been standing there for 30 seconds trying to decide if you trust me enough to drink something I made. He turned, spatula in hand, amusement dancing in his dark eyes. It's not poisoned. I went through too much trouble to keep you alive to kill you now. Zariyah's cheeks heated. I wasn't. You were. He plated the eggs with practiced efficiency. It's smart, cautious. Your father trained you well. The mention of her father created an ache in her chest, sharp and immediate. She moved to pour coffee, needing something to do with her hands. The ceramic mug was warm, solid, real. You really knew him. For 3 years, we worked together on Operation Shadow, his investigation into human trafficking networks across Europe. Alejandro plated the eggs, gestured for her to sit at the small table. He was one of the best men I've ever known. Honest in a world full of liars. Brave without being reckless. He talked about you constantly. Zariyah's throat tightened. He did. Every conversation ended with him mentioning something you'd done. Your acceptance to the FBI Academy, your photographic memory, how you'd memorized entire case files just by reading them once. He was so proud of you. Alejandro set the plate in front of her, then sat across with his own. He also worried. Worried you'd follow him into this work. Worried you'd be too much like him, too willing to sacrifice yourself for the mission. Then why didn't he tell me about you? The question came out sharper than intended. Alejandro's expression softened with something like understanding. Because keeping secrets kept you safe. If you didn't know about me, you couldn't accidentally reveal the connection. And if Enzo suspected James had help inside the family... He trailed off, the implication clear. They'd both be dead. Zariyah sat, accepted the plate he offered. The eggs smelled incredible, seasoned with herbs she couldn't identify, cooked perfectly. When had she last eaten real food? What exactly is our arrangement supposed to look like to the outside world? We met 3 months ago at a cafe near the Spanish Steps. You were reading Dante's Inferno, annotating in the margins. I was charmed by a woman who'd traveled to Italy just to read Italian literature in Italian. He said it easily, like fabricating romance was simple, like he'd done this before. I approached you. We talked about the circles of hell, about American perspectives on Italian culture. You were brilliantly argumentative. I was hooked. Maybe for him it was simple. And your family believed this? They will, especially after you meet them. His coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. Friday night. Family dinner at Enzo's estate. Zariyah's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. I have to meet your family? It's unavoidable. Enzo will want to inspect you. His word, not mine. Alejandro's expression was carefully neutral, but she caught the tension in his jaw. He'll test you. Try to find weaknesses, connections, anything he can use as leverage. You need to have your story straight, need to know it so well that lying feels like truth. Inspect me. The words tasted bitter. I know how it sounds, but that's the world I come from. Women are assets, property, tools for alliances. Enzo will want to know what I'm gaining from this engagement, what value you bring beyond being beautiful. The casual compliment made her stomach flip. She ignored it. And what am I supposed to bring? Legitimacy, normalcy, the appearance that I'm settling down, becoming domesticated, no longer a threat to his control of the family. Alejandro leaned forward, elbows on the table. Enzo's been waiting for me to make a mistake, waiting for proof that I'm plotting against him. A sudden fiancé, especially one with no mafia connections, makes me look distracted, harmless. Are you plotting against him? Every single day. No hesitation, no pretense. Enzo Salvatore is a cancer. He's destroyed lives, trafficked thousands, corrupted everything he touches. Taking him down isn't just about revenge for your father. It's about stopping him from destroying more families. The egg suddenly tasted like ash in her mouth. Enzo Salvatore, the man who killed her father. She'd be sitting at his table in 4 days, pretending to be in love with his nephew, searching for the compass he'd stolen, pretending her hands weren't shaking with the urge to wrap them around his throat. Her father had taught her to be brave. He'd never mentioned it would feel like swallowing glass. I can do it, she said, meeting Alejandro's eyes with more confidence than she felt. Whatever you need me to do, I can handle your uncle. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or concern that she didn't understand what she was walking into. Enzo will test you in ways you're not expecting. He'll ask about your father, about your past. He'll watch how we interact, looking for cracks in the performance. If he suspects for 1 second that you're not who you claim to be or that I'm using you for something, then we better practice. Zariyah pushed her plate aside, suddenly all business. If we only have 4 days, we need to make every hour count. Tell me everything, how we met, our first date, what made us fall in love. Every detail needs to be perfect. Alejandro smiled, genuine and a little surprised. You sound like your father. He approached every operation like a military campaign. Good. Then let's strategize. They spent the morning building their cover story, layer by layer. How they met, the cafe, the book, his terrible opening line about Dante that made her laugh. Their first date, a walk through Villa Borghese that lasted 6 hours because neither wanted it to end. The moment they knew, for him, when she argued passionately about the ethics of Machiavelli. For her, when he admitted he'd read her favorite obscure novel just to understand her better. Each detail crafted carefully, woven together until it felt almost real. Until Zariyah could almost believe she'd fallen for this complicated, dangerous man who cooked eggs and protected her from shadows and looked at her like she was something precious instead of a mission asset. Almost. By afternoon, exhaustion caught up with her. 6 months of survival on 2 hours of sleep per night couldn't be erased by one comfortable bed. Her eyes kept drifting closed mid-sentence. Her responses came slower. The weight of safety was heavier than the weight of survival. Alejandro noticed her swaying on her feet during their 15th rehearsal of meeting Enzo. Sleep, he said gently, steadying her with a hand on her elbow. You're safe here. I promise. Zariyah wanted to argue, wanted to prove she didn't need rest or comfort or care. But her body betrayed her, dragging her toward the bedroom like gravity pulling her home. She collapsed onto the bed fully clothed and fell into dreamless sleep. When she woke hours later, twilight painted the room purple and gold. She emerged to find Alejandro on the couch, laptop open, working on something he quickly minimized when she appeared, but not before she caught a glimpse. Architectural plans, property listings, numbers that didn't match a bankrupt man's finances. Feeling better? His voice was carefully casual. Yes, thank you. The words felt strange. Gratitude. When had she last felt grateful for anything? What were you working on? Nothing important. A lie. She could tell by the way his shoulders tensed, the way his hand lingered on the laptop edge. But she didn't push. Not yet. She was cataloging his tells, learning how to read him. Every spy needed to know their marks. They ate dinner together that evening. Pasta he made from scratch, teaching her the technique his grandmother had taught him when he was 8. Standing too close in the small kitchen, their hands brushing as he guided hers through the motion of kneading dough. The air between them felt charged, electric, dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with mafia families and everything to do with the way his breath hitched when she looked up at him through her lashes. Like this? She asked, pressing her palms into the dough. Perfect. His hands covered hers, adjusting pressure. Feel how it responds? That's how you know it's ready. She felt something responding, but it wasn't the dough. This was a mistake. Getting close to him, feeling safe with him, wanting him. But God help her, she did. That night, lying in bed in the room next to his, Zariyah touched the wall between them and wondered if he was doing the same on the other side. Wondered if he felt this pull too. Wondered what her father would think about his daughter falling for the man he'd trusted with everything. Through the wall, she heard him moving, heard water running, heard the creak of his bed as he settled in. So close. Just a wall between them. A wall and a mission, and 1,000 reasons this couldn't work. She fell asleep with her hand pressed to the wall and dreamed of dark eyes and promises that felt too much like hope. 3 days of domestic life passed in surreal normalcy that felt like playing house. Zariyah learned Alejandro's routines. He woke at 5:30, ran 6 miles regardless of weather, returned to make espresso that smelled like heaven. She memorized the way he took his coffee: black, 2 sugars he pretended not to need, and the slight smile that appeared when she said something that surprised him, which was often. She also searched his apartment methodically while he was out on his morning runs. The living room revealed nothing suspicious. The kitchen held expensive espresso equipment for a supposedly poor man, but nothing incriminating. His bedroom, she'd only peeked in once, feeling like a voyeur, was monk-like in its simplicity. 1 bed, 1 nightstand, 1 photo. She'd risk entering tonight. But it was the locked drawer in his desk that called to her. She'd noticed it the first day, subtle, built into an antique writing desk that looked inherited rather than purchased. The lock was simple. She could pick it in 30 seconds. She gave it 15. Inside, architectural plans for properties across Naples. Not properties he'd lost. Properties under active development. Luxury apartments, commercial buildings, hotels. All marked with a symbol she didn't recognize. A stylized shadow. Il ombra. The shadow. She was staring at proof that Alejandro wasn't bankrupt when heavy knocking shattered her concentration. Aggressive, urgent. The kind of knocking that preceded bad news. Zariyah shoved the plans back, closed the drawer. The lock clicked shut just as Alejandro appeared from his room, face hard, shoulders squared. He moved like a soldier preparing for combat. "Family," he said grimly. "Remember the story. We met at a cafe, 3 months. Dante's Inferno. You love my terrible coffee and my even worse jokes." "I love—" The door knocked again, harder. "Right. Love. Got it." He opened the door to reveal a handsome man with cold eyes and a cruel smile that reminded Zariyah of sharks. Well-dressed, expensive cologne. The kind of man who'd never been told no and punished anyone who tried. "Cousin!" Joseph Salvatore's voice dripped false warmth like poisoned honey. "I heard a rumor you'd acquired a guest. Wanted to meet her myself." Acquired. Like she was furniture. Like she was property purchased at auction, which technically she was. Zariyah stepped forward before Alejandro could respond, before she could second-guess the strategy forming in her mind. Offense, not defense. Strike first. "Fiancé, not guest," she said, voice confident and clear. "And you are?" Joseph's eyebrows rose. He took her hand, kissed it too long, his lips lingering on her skin in a way that made her want to break his nose. "Joseph Salvatore, Enzo's son. Enchanted." His eyes raked over her appraisingly, cataloging every detail like she was merchandise. "Tell me, how does an American beauty end up with my pathetic cousin?" The insult was calculated. Testing if she'd defend Alejandro or pile on. Testing her loyalty. "I prefer pathetic and loyal to rich and treacherous," Zariyah said smoothly, pulling her hand back with just enough force to make a point. "I've found money can't buy character, though I suppose people keep trying." Behind her, Alejandro hid a smile. She felt it more than saw it. The shift in his energy from tension to something like pride. Joseph's charm cracked like porcelain. "Clever. Alejandro, where did you find this one? She's got bite." "She found me, actually." Alejandro's hand found Zariyah's lower back, possessive and protective. The touch sent electricity up her spine. "I was the lucky one." "Lucky." Joseph's gaze turned speculative. "Yes, let's call it that. May I come in? Or are you hiding something?" "Of course." Zariyah gestured graciously, like this was her home and Joseph the intruder instead of the other way around. Would you like coffee? Alejandro makes it terribly, but I'm learning to tolerate it. The next 20 minutes were psychological warfare disguised as pleasantries. Joseph circled the apartment like a predator mapping territory, asking questions designed to trap. Where did they meet? How long had they known each other? What did Zariyah's family think of Alejandro? Each question a blade seeking the gap in their armor. Zariyah parried every thrust with the precision her father would have applauded. She embellished their cover story with details that felt real. The way Alejandro had mispronounced Beatrice's name their first conversation, making her laugh. The rain that caught them on their walk, forcing them to shelter under a cafe awning where they talked until the owner kicked them out at midnight. The moment he admitted he'd been terrified to approach her because she looked too intelligent to tolerate him. "You're quite the storyteller," Joseph said, but his eyes were calculating. "Almost too detailed. Like you've practiced. I have a good memory." Zariyah met his gaze without flinching. Photographic, actually. My father said it was both blessing and curse. I remember everything. Conversations, faces, insults disguised as compliments. The threat landed. Joseph's smile sharpened. "Your father. What did he do?" Here it was. The real test. Lie or tell the truth, knowing the truth was more dangerous, but lies were easier to catch. "FBI," she said simply. "He died 6 months ago. That's why I left America. Needed to escape the memories." Joseph's interest sharpened like a wolf scenting blood. "FBI. How fascinating. And he approved of you dating Italian men? Men from certain families?" He never got to meet Alejandro. The grief in her voice wasn't manufactured. "He died before I came to Rome, before I met anyone. But my father taught me to judge people by their actions, not their ancestry. Alejandro's actions speak clearly." "Do they?" Joseph's eyes flicked to his cousin. "Actions like what? Losing the family fortune? Becoming a charity case?" "Actions like making me breakfast every morning even though I never asked. Like teaching me to cook pasta because he knows I love learning new things. Like respecting when I say no, which apparently isn't universal in your family." The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Alejandro's hand tightened on Zariyah's back. Warning or support, she wasn't sure. But his voice stayed level. "Joseph, was there a reason for this visit? Or did you just want to insult me in my own home?" Joseph stood slowly, adjusting his expensive suit. "Uncle Enzo requests your presence at dinner. Both of you." He smiled at Zariyah like a shark smiling at a seal. "Tonight, 8 o'clock. He's eager to meet the woman who's captured my cousin's heart." "Tonight?" Alejandro's jaw tightened. "We were told Friday." Plans changed. Joseph headed for the door, then turned back. "Oh, and cousin. Uncle's heard interesting rumors about Ilombra's recent activities in Naples. Thought you should know. In case you've seen anything suspicious during your morning runs." The name hung in the air like a loaded gun. Alejandro's face gave nothing away. "I've been too busy rebuilding my life to pay attention to rumors." "Of course. See you at 8. Don't be late." Joseph's eyes landed on Zariyah one final time. "Both of you." The door closed. The silence was deafening. Zariyah counted to 10 before speaking. "He knows something. He suspects something. There's a difference." Alejandro's voice was tight with controlled tension. "But you were incredible. The way you..." "My father taught me never to back down from bullies." She turned to face him fully. "But Alejandro, we're not ready." "We're as ready as we'll ever be." He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. I'm calling in reinforcements. Extra security on the perimeter of Enzo's estate. If anything goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. Zariyah, nothing will go wrong because we're going to prepare. She grabbed his hand, surprising them both with the contact. We have 9 hours. That's enough time to be perfect. He looked down at their joined hands, then up at her face. Something shifted in his expression, the professional mask cracking to reveal the man underneath. You're not afraid. I'm terrified. Honesty felt easier than lying. Fear is just information. It tells me the stakes are high. It doesn't tell me to run. Your father really did train you well. He trained me to finish where I start, and I started this hunt 6 months ago. I'm not stopping now. They spent the afternoon in focused preparation. Alejandro drew a map of Enzo's estate from memory, marking every room, every guard post, every camera. Zariyah memorized it in 7 minutes, her photographic memory cataloging every detail. They rehearsed responses to hostile questions. They practiced their body language, how close to stand, where to touch, how to look at each other like people in love instead of people playing roles. By 7 o'clock, they were as ready as panic and preparation could make them. Zariyah showered, then stared at her limited wardrobe. Everything she owned fit in one backpack. She had nothing appropriate for dinner with Mafia boss. A knock. I have something for you. Alejandro stood in the hallway holding a garment bag and shoebox. These were my mother's. She was about your size. Inside the bag, a dress. Simple but elegant. Black. Classic. The kind of dress that would fit anywhere from a funeral to a gala. Your mother's? Zariyah touched the fabric reverently. She'd want you to have it. She hated Enzo. His voice carried old pain. She died trying to protect me from him. This dress was her armor. Maybe it can be yours too. The dress fit perfectly. The shoes, simple black heels, were only slightly too large. Zariyah stared at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. 6 months ago, she'd been an FBI Academy student. Now she was breaking bread with her father's killer. She emerged to find Alejandro in a suit that made him look dangerous and elegant in equal measure. His eyes widened when he saw her. You're beautiful. I'm terrified. You can be both. He offered his arm. Ready? No. But let's go anyway. The drive to Enzo's estate took 20 minutes through winding Naples streets. Alejandro's old Fiat looked pathetic, pulling up to the massive villa, all marble and armed guards, and the kind of wealth built on suffering. Before they exited the car, Alejandro caught her hand. Whatever happens tonight, stay close to me. If Enzo tries to separate us, refuse. If anyone makes you uncomfortable, tell me immediately, and if things go wrong, they won't. If they do, you run. You don't wait for me. You don't play hero. You survive. Promise me. Zariyah looked at this man who'd kept her alive for months, who'd promised her father to protect her, who was walking into danger because of her mission. I promise I'll do whatever it takes to make sure we both survive. How's that? Frustratingly vague, but I'll take it. He squeezed her hand once. Let's go meet the devil. They walked toward Enzo Salvatore's villa together, and Zariyah had never felt so much like she was walking into hell with her eyes wide open. The villa's dining room was designed to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings that swallowed sound. A table that could seat 30 but held only 8. Crystal chandeliers worth more than most homes. Armed guards pretending to be servants, their bulges obvious to anyone trained to notice. And at the head of the table, silver-haired and smiling like a benevolent grandfather, sat the man who'd murdered Zariyah's father. Enzo Salvatore rose as they entered, arms open in welcome. Nephew. And this must be the mysterious fiancé Joseph told me about. Zariyah's training kicked in automatically. Catalog the room, identify exits, count potential threats, maintain cover. 6 guards. 2 exits including the one they'd entered. Windows too high to be useful. Enzo's eyes, cold despite his warm smile, tracking every micro-expression on her face. She plastered on the smile she'd practiced. Demure but not submissive, confident but not challenging. Mr. Salvatore, thank you for inviting us to your beautiful home. Please, call me Enzo. He took her hand, studying her face with the intensity of a jeweler, examining a diamond for flaws. His grip lasted 3 seconds too long. And you must be Zariyah. Joseph speaks highly of your spirit. Translation. Joseph had warned him she was difficult. I hope I can live up to the description, she said, reclaiming her hand with a polite smile. I'm sure you will. American, yes? Joseph mentioned Washington, D.C. Enzo gestured for them to sit. Alejandro pulled out Zariyah's chair, a small gesture that felt protective. What brought you to our corner of Italy? Here we go. Tragedy, unfortunately. I lost my father 6 months ago. Needed to escape the memories. Italy seemed like a good place to start over. I'm very sorry for your loss. Enzo's sympathy sounded genuine, which made it more sinister. The man had probably perfected condolence speeches at the funerals of people he'd ordered killed. What did your father do, if you don't mind my asking? The room went still. Every guard, every family member, every piece of silverware seemed to freeze in anticipation. Zariyah met Enzo's eyes without flinching. Truth was her only weapon here. Lies could be checked, verified, unraveled. He was FBI, fraud division, spent his career taking down financial criminals. He died in the line of duty. She watched Enzo's face for any tell, recognition of James Williams' name, guilt over his murder, satisfaction at sitting across from his victim's daughter. But Enzo's mask was perfect. Years of practice hiding monsters behind grandfather smiles. FBI. Enzo's voice carried calculated surprise. And you're engaged to my nephew. How unexpected. Love truly does transcend all boundaries, doesn't it? It does, Alejandro said, his hand finding Zariyah's under the table. The touch was warm, grounding. Zariyah's father's work has nothing to do with us. She left that life behind. Of course, of course. Please sit. Dinner is waiting. Enzo clapped his hands. Servants materialized with plates of antipasti, prosciutto, mozzarella, olives glistening with oil. Food is theater. The next hour was psychological warfare disguised as pasta courses. Enzo probed delicately, asking questions designed to sound casual but aimed at vulnerable spots. How had they met? What did Zariyah see in his bankrupt nephew? What were their plans for the future? Each question a scalpel seeking the place their cover story might split open. Zariyah answered with the practiced ease of someone who'd memorized their lies so thoroughly they became truth. The cafe, the book, the connection that felt inevitable. She embellished with details Alejandro hadn't mentioned. How he'd spilled espresso on her notes. How his apology had been so genuinely mortified she'd laughed instead of being angry. How that laugh had changed everything. You're quite the storyteller, Enzo observed, refilling her wineglass personally. A host's gesture that felt like a threat. Very detailed memories for something that happened months ago. I have a photographic memory, Zariyah said easily. Blessing and curse. I remember everything. First conversations, faces, the exact color of the sky the day I met Alejandro. It was golden, like honey. Across the table, Joseph snorted. How convenient. A memory that can't be fact-checked. Actually, it can. Zariyah's smile sharpened. There are weather records for that day. Security footage from the cafe. Credit card receipts with timestamps. Would you like me to provide documentation of our relationship, or are you just habitually suspicious? Enzo laughed, genuine and delighted. She has fire. I like this one, Alejandro. Much better than your usual type. I have a type, Alejandro asked dryly. Boring, Joseph muttered into his wine. The servants brought the main course, osso buco that smelled divine and tasted like ashes in Zariyah's mouth because she couldn't stop staring at the wall behind Enzo's head. Her mother's painting. Abstract. Beautiful. Distinctive brushstrokes Zariyah would recognize anywhere. The piece had hung in her father's office. The FBI had cataloged it as missing after his death. And now it decorated a murderer's dining room like a trophy. Her hand clenched on her fork hard enough to hurt. Under the table, Alejandro's hand covered hers, squeezed once. A message. I see it too. Stay calm. That painting, Zariyah heard herself say, voice steady despite the rage burning in her chest. It's beautiful. Where did you acquire it? Enzo glanced back at it, pride in his voice. Ah, you have excellent taste. Estate sale a few months ago. The artist had real talent, though I believe she's deceased now. Which only increases its value, of course. Deceased. He said it like discussing stock prices, not a woman who created beauty and left a daughter behind to mourn her. The style is distinctive, Zariyah managed. Almost looks like dessert. A servant appeared with tiramisu, interrupting before she could finish the thought. Coincidence or calculated? The dinner stretched on, each minute an eternity. Joseph made snide comments about Alejandro's finances. Enzo told stories about the family's glory days, conveniently omitting the trafficking and murder. Other family members, cousins, business associates, watched Zariyah like scientists observing a specimen. Then, just as Zariyah thought they might escape unscathed, the doorbell rang. Enzo's face lit up. Ah, perfect timing. I invited another guest, someone you might know, Zariyah. The dining room doors opened. Marco Russo walked in. Zariyah's world tilted. Marco, the kind photographer who'd helped her survive her first month in Rome, who'd shared food when she was starving, who'd taught her the safest places to sleep and the guards to avoid. Her friend. What was he doing here? Zari? Marco's face showed genuine shock, then overwhelming relief. Oh my God, you're alive! I've been looking everywhere for you. You disappeared 3 days ago. I thought something terrible had happened. He crossed the room, quickly, took her hands in his before she could react. Real warmth. Real concern. Unless he was a better actor than she'd given him credit for. You two know each other? Enzo's voice was silk over steel, pleased as a cat who'd cornered 2 mice. Marco helped me when I first arrived in Rome, Zariyah said carefully, trying to read the situation. Before I met Alejandro, he's a photographer documenting street life. Among other things, Enzo added smoothly. Marco here is quite talented. I'm his patron. Small world, isn't it? Too small. Far, far too small. Marco was still holding her hands, looking at her like a man who'd found something precious he'd thought lost. Behind him, Alejandro stood slowly, not threatening, not yet, but every line of his body screamed danger. Marco. Alejandro's voice was controlled ice. I don't believe we've been properly introduced. I'm Alejandro, Zariyah's fiancé. The word fiancé hit Marco like a physical blow. His face went through shock, hurt, confusion in rapid succession. Fiancé? Zari, You never mentioned— It's recent, Zariyah said, pulling her hands free. Marco, things happened quickly after we last spoke. How quickly? Marco's voice carried an edge she'd never heard before. You were homeless 3 days ago. Now you're engaged to a Salvatore? Careful, Alejandro said quietly, but the threat was unmistakable. Gentlemen, please. Enzo was enjoying this far too much. No need for hostility. Zariyah clearly has a talent for making friends in unexpected places. Marco, why don't you join us for coffee? The rest of dinner was excruciating. Marco sat across from Zariyah, his eyes asking questions she couldn't answer. Alejandro beside her, radiating cold fury. Enzo orchestrating it all like a conductor enjoying his symphony of discomfort. When Marco asked to speak with Zariyah privately, Alejandro nearly exploded. Anything you need to say to her, you can say in front of me, Alejandro said, standing. We're engaged. We don't have secrets. This is personal, Marco insisted. We're engaged, Alejandro repeated. We don't have secrets. Zariyah put a hand on Alejandro's arm, felt the tension coiled beneath his sleeve. It's fine. 5 minutes. Marco's my friend. Zariyah. The way he said her name carried warning and something deeper. Possession. Fear. She met his eyes, tried to communicate everything she couldn't say aloud. Trust me. I know what I'm doing. I'll be careful. Finally, reluctantly he nodded. The villa's terrace overlooked Naples' glittering nightscape. Beautiful and deadly, like everything in this world. Marco leaned against the railing, and for the first time, Zariyah noticed he looked exhausted. What are you doing, Zari? His voice was raw. The Salvatores are dangerous. Alejandro's family has connections to trafficking, murder, every crime you can imagine. You need to get out. I know what I'm doing. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you went from homeless to engaged in 3 days. That's not love. That's coercion. Zariyah studied him carefully. Was this genuine concern? Or was Marco here for another reason? Enzo's patron. Too convenient. Why do you care so much? Because in 6 months of seeing you on those streets, watching you survive, I got to know you. The real you. Marco turned to face her fully, and the emotion in his eyes looked painfully real. I care about you, Zari. More than I probably should. And watching you with him in there, it's wrong. He's using you for something. Maybe I'm using him. Are you? She couldn't answer that. Didn't know the answer anymore. Was she using Alejandro to find the compass? Or had something else started happening in the quiet moments making pasta and rehearsing cover stories? Marco, I appreciate your concern, but I have resources, connections. Whatever you're looking for, whatever brought you to Italy, I can help. You don't need him. Before she could respond, the terrace door opened. Alejandro stood there backlit by the dining room's golden light, looking like an avenging angel. Conversation's over, he said flatly. We're not done, Marco protested. Yes, you are. Alejandro crossed the terrace in 3 strides, positioned himself between Zariyah and Marco. Not subtle, not apologetic, pure possessive territorially. My fiancé needs to leave now. Say goodbye, Marco. The tension was thick enough to cut. Marco looked at Zariyah one more time, pleading. If you need anything at all, I'm here. Then he was gone, and Zariyah was alone with Alejandro's barely controlled fury. He has feelings for you, Alejandro said, voice tight. That's not my fault, isn't it? He turned to face her fully. You spent 6 months with him. You must have known. I was surviving, not flirting. And now Enzo knows you have a connection to Marco. He'll use that. He's probably already planning how. Then we deal with it. We? Alejandro stepped closer into her personal space, vibrating with emotion he was fighting to control. There's no we if you're keeping secrets. What did Marco say to you? He's worried about me. He wants you. The words came out raw, honest. Any man with eyes would want you. But you're my fiancé. Fake or not, people will talk if you're seen sneaking off with other men. I didn't sneak. You gave permission. Because you asked in front of Enzo. What was I supposed to do? Look possessive and controlling? You are possessive and controlling. They stared at each other, breathing hard, the space between them charged with more than anger. Something else crackled in the air. Want, need, frustration that had nothing to do with Marco and everything to do with the way Alejandro was looking at her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. This is an act, Zariyah whispered, but her conviction wavered. Is it? Alejandro's hand came up, cupped her face with surprising gentleness. Because it stopped feeling like acting 3 days ago. He kissed her. Finally. Desperately. Months of tension exploding into contact that burned through every defense she'd built. Zariyah gasped against his mouth, and he took advantage, deepening the kiss, one hand tangling in her hair while the other pulled her flush against him. She kissed back just as fiercely, grabbing fistfuls of his jacket, rising on her toes to get closer, drowning in the taste of him, espresso and wine, and something uniquely Alejandro that made her forget why this was a terrible idea. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, foreheads touching, the world had shifted on its axis. That complicates things, Zariyah managed. I know. We should establish boundaries. We should. Neither moved. Neither wanted to. From inside, Enzo's laughter drifted through the open door, a reminder of where they were, what they were risking. We should go, Alejandro said reluctantly. Yes. But before they could move, Enzo appeared in the doorway, smiling like he'd won something. Beautiful evening, isn't it? Oh, and Alejandro, before you leave, I have a gift for you. He snapped his fingers. A guard appeared, handed Alejandro a folder. Alejandro opened it. His face went white. Where did you get this? His voice was deadly quiet. I have eyes everywhere, nephew. Everywhere. Enzo's smile widened. Interesting reading material, isn't it? Zariyah tried to see what was inside, but Alejandro closed the folder quickly. Too quickly. We're leaving, he said tersely, taking Zariyah's hand. So soon? But we haven't had coffee. Thank you for dinner, Uncle. They left quickly, tension radiating from Alejandro like heat. In the car, Zariyah grabbed the folder from his hands before he could stop her. Inside, surveillance photos of her. For 6 months. Every place she'd slept. Every move she'd made. Every moment she'd thought she was invisible. And at the bottom, a photo that made her blood run cold. Her father's body. Crime scene photo. With a note in Enzo's handwriting, I know who she is. The question is, do you? Zariyah's hand shook. Alejandro's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. He knows, she whispered. Enzo knows exactly who I am. I know. He's been watching me for 6 months. This whole time. I know. That's why I had my men protecting you. She turned to stare at him. You knew Enzo was hunting me. That's why I orchestrated the auction. I had to get to you before he did. You... Understanding crashed over her like a wave. You created my debt. You ensured I'd be at that auction. It wasn't me hunting you. It was you rescuing me. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because you needed to feel in control. Because if I'd told you I was protecting you, you would have run." His voice was rough with emotion. "And I couldn't let you run, Zariyah. I promised your father, and He stopped. Started again. "I couldn't let you die." The weight of his words settled between them. Everything she'd thought she'd known was wrong. She hadn't been hunting Alejandro. He'd been saving her. The prey had been the predator had been the protector. "What do we do now?" she asked quietly. "Now?" Alejandro's jaw clenched. "Now we finish what your father started. Because Enzo knowing who you are means he's planning something, and we need to move first." He drove through Naples' dark streets, and Zariyah realized with absolute certainty that everything was about to explode. The careful dance was over. The masks were coming off. Time to finish this. For her father, for Marco's complicated redemption arc she didn't yet understand, for the compass holding truth and justice, and maybe, just maybe, for the man beside her who'd been protecting her all along. The apartment felt different when they returned. Smaller, more intimate, charged with everything unspoken between them. Zariyah paced the living room while Alejandro made phone calls in clipped Italian, his voice carrying military precision. When he finally hung up, she rounded on him. "Tell me everything. No more secrets. No more protection through ignorance. If we're doing this together, I need to know what I'm walking into." Alejandro studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Your father called me 30 minutes before he died." Zariyah's breath caught. He knew Enzo was coming for him. Knew someone inside the FBI had betrayed him. His last words to me were, "Find my daughter. Keep her alive. There's a compass. It has everything. She'll know what to do with it." Alejandro's voice roughened. "I promised him." And 3 hours later, James Williams was dead. "The compass," Zariyah whispered. "He told me the same thing in his note. Said it would prove everything. That it held my inheritance. 500 million euros in offshore accounts. Plus evidence of Enzo's entire trafficking network. Routes, contacts, buyers, victims. Your father spent 3 years compiling it." Alejandro pulled out his phone, showed her architectural plans. "The compass is in Enzo's private vault. Under his estate, it's where he keeps everything valuable. Art, documents, leverage material. Including my mother's painting." "Yes." He met her eyes. "I'm sorry. I should have told you when I first saw it tonight. You were protecting me. I was trying to. Not sure I'm succeeding." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "The vault is a fortress. Biometric locks, armed guards, surveillance everywhere. Getting in requires planning, precision, and probably a small miracle. Then let's plan." Zariyah moved to the table, spread out paper. "You know the layout. I have photographic memory. Between us, we can map every detail." They worked through the night, fueled by espresso and determination. Alejandro drew the estate from memory, every hallway, every guard post, every camera angle. Zariyah memorized it all, her trained mind cataloging escape routes and variables. By 3 a.m., they had a plan. Risky, complicated, probably suicidal. "We need to get you into the vault without triggering alarms," Alejandro said, pointing to the map. "My biometric data is still in the system from when I lived there. I can get us through the first 2 checkpoints. But the vault itself requires a code only Enzo knows. Can you get it? I can try, but using my credentials will alert security. We'll have maybe 5 minutes before guards arrive. 5 minutes to find the compass, get out, and disappear." Zariyah's mind calculated probabilities. It's tight, but possible. And if we're caught? Then we fight our way out. Alejandro smiled despite everything. Your father would be terrified by how much like him you are. Is that a compliment? The highest one I have. He reached across the table, took her hand. Zariyah, if we do this, if we really do this, there's no going back. Enzo will know we betrayed him. Every family in Italy will be hunting us. Your life will never be normal again. My life stopped being normal the day my father died. She squeezed his hand. But I'd rather live dangerously with the truth than safely with lies. Even if the truth gets you killed? Even then. She leaned forward. Alejandro, what we're doing, it's bigger than just revenge. My father documented everything because he wanted to save people, thousands of people. If we get that compass, we can finish what he started. We can dismantle Enzo's entire operation. And if we fail, then we fail trying to do something that matters. She met his eyes. I'd rather die fighting for something right than live safely doing nothing. Something shifted in Alejandro's expression. Pride. Respect. Something deeper that made her breath catch. Your father told me once that you were the bravest person he knew. Said you got it from your mother. The ability to see what needs doing and do it without counting the cost. He talked about my mother. Constantly. He said she saw him when he was just a scared FBI rookie, believed in him when he doubted himself, pushed him to be better than he thought possible. He said you inherited her heart, fierce, loyal, incapable of walking away from injustice. Tears pricked Zariyah's eyes. I miss them both so much. I know, but they'd be so proud of you right now. The woman who survived 6 months on the streets, who walked into Enzo's villa and didn't flinch, who's planning to break into a mafia vault because it's the right thing to do. He stood, moved around the table. You're extraordinary, Zariyah, and I... His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, swore. What? Enzo. He's moved up the timeline. He knows we're planning something. How? Marco. Alejandro's jaw clenched. Has to be. He's the only new variable. He must be reporting to Enzo. No. Zariyah shook her head. Marco wouldn't. Wouldn't he? How well do you really know him? You met him on the streets. He helped you survive. Very convenient. Very timely. What if that was all orchestrated? What if Enzo planted him there to watch you? The words hit like cold water. Everything Zariyah thought she knew tilted sideways. Marco's kindness, his help, his concern tonight. What if none of it was real? We need to move, Alejandro said grimly. Tonight. Now. Before Enzo can prepare. Now? Zariyah's pulse raced. We're not ready. We're as ready as we'll ever be. And if we wait, we lose the element of surprise. He grabbed tactical gear from a hidden closet, black clothes, weapons, equipment that suggested he'd been preparing for this possibility for months. Get changed. We leave in 10 minutes. Zariyah dressed quickly, hands shaking with adrenaline. The tactical clothes fit perfectly. He'd bought them for her, she realized. Prepared for this moment. Always 3 steps ahead. When she emerged, Alejandro was checking weapons with professional efficiency. He handed her a gun. Do you know how to use this? My father made sure I did. Good. Because if things go wrong... They won't, Zariyah said with more confidence than she felt. If they do, you run. You don't wait for me. You don't try to save me. You survive. Promise me. She looked at this man who'd protected her for months, who'd promised her father to keep her safe, who was risking everything because of her mission. I promise we'll both survive. How's that? Frustratingly vague. But he smiled, then pulled her close and kissed her. Hard, desperate. A promise and a prayer wrapped into one moment. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. For luck, he said. We're going to need it. They drove through Naples' dark streets toward Enzo's estate, and with every mile, Zariyah felt the weight of what they were about to do. Breaking into a mafia vault, stealing evidence, declaring war on one of Italy's most dangerous families. But her father had died for this, had trusted Alejandro with his final breath, and Zariyah Williams didn't back down from promises to the dead. The estate loomed ahead, dark except for security lights. They parked 2 blocks away, approached on foot, staying in shadows. Alejandro moved like he'd done this 1,000 times. Zariyah matched his rhythm, her FBI training kicking in. First gate. Alejandro's old code still worked. They slipped through. Second checkpoint. Biometric scanner. Alejandro placed his hand on it, leaned toward the iris reader. Click. The door opened. 5 minutes, he whispered. Timer starts now. They ran down stone corridors Alejandro navigated from memory, underground, cold. The vault door loomed ahead, massive, intimidating, sealed tight. Alejandro entered the code he'd memorized from years of watching Enzo input it. The door began to open with a hydraulic hiss. Inside, exactly as promised, rows of filing cabinets, artwork, safe deposit boxes, and in the center, displayed like a museum piece, her mother's painting. Zariyah crossed to it like a woman in a trance. Up close, she could see her mother's signature in the corner. Could remember watching her create this piece in their kitchen, humming while she worked. Behind it, Alejandro said urgently. Check behind it. Zariyah lifted the painting carefully, and there, mounted on the wall, hidden in plain sight, the compass. It was beautiful. Antique brass, ornate engravings, exactly as her father had described. She reached for it with shaking hands. The moment she touched it, her birthmark began to glow. Faint blue light emanated from the crescent moon shape on her inner wrist. Biometric activation. Her DNA was the key. The compass opened in her hands. Inside, a holographic projector activated, showing coordinates, file names, encryption keys, data her father had hidden, evidence of everything Enzo had done, routes, contacts, victims, financial records, offshore accounts containing 500 million euros. My God, Zariyah whispered. He documented everything. Zariyah, we need to... Alarms blared, loud, aggressive, too soon. They still had 2 minutes on Alejandro's estimate. Someone had betrayed them. Guards poured in, 6 of them, armed, dangerous, moving with military precision. Alejandro pushed Zariyah behind him instantly. Run! Not without you. What happened next was choreographed violence. Zariyah and Alejandro moved as one unit, their training synchronizing perfectly. She disarmed one guard with a move her father had taught her. Alejandro took down 2 simultaneously. Back to back, they fought like people who'd trained together for years instead of days. But more guards came. Too many. They were outnumbered. Then Enzo stepped from the shadows, gun raised, smiling like he'd won. Going somewhere, nephew? They froze, surrounded, trapped. Enzo's eyes landed on the compass in Zariyah's hands. Ah, so that's what this was about. James Williams' insurance policy. I've been wondering where he'd hidden it. Uncle, Alejandro started. Silence. The gun swung to Zariyah, the FBI brat, James Williams' daughter. I've been waiting 6 months for you to show yourself, and you walked right into my home like a lamb to slaughter. Zariyah lifted her chin, defiant even with a gun pointed at her heart. You killed my father. I did, and I enjoyed it. Enzo's smile was cruel. He begged, at the end, begged me to spare you. It was almost touching. Rage exploded through Zariyah, white-hot and consuming. She lunged forward before thinking, before Alejandro could stop her. Enzo's finger moved to the trigger. Alejandro stepped in front of her, between her and the bullet, shielding her with his body. "No!" Zariyah screamed. But before Enzo could fire, gunshots rang out. Not from Enzo, from behind them. Guards dropped. 1, 2, 3. Tranquilizer darts hitting with precision. From the corridor, Marco appeared. Gun raised, a face grim. "Get out of here! Now!" Confusion reigned. Marco shooting Enzo's men. Enzo turning his gun toward this new threat. Alejandro grabbing Zariyah's hand, pulling her toward the Shuo. Exit. "But Marco," Zariyah protested. "He's buying us time. Don't waste it." They ran. Through tunnels Alejandro navigated from memory. Behind them, more gunfire. Shouting. Chaos. They burst into the night, into Alejandro's car, tires screaming as they fled into Naples' dark streets. "Marco saved us," Zariyah said, breathless and confused. "Why would he? I don't know. But we need to disappear. Now." Alejandro drove with precision, taking turns that suggested he'd planned escape routes long ago. 20 minutes later, they reached the safe house, an abandoned warehouse across town. Dark. Secure. Empty except for emergency supplies Alejandro had stashed. They stumbled inside, adrenaline still pumping, both shaking from how close death had come. "You stepped in front of me," Zariyah said, turning to face him. "You were going to let Enzo shoot you. I wasn't going to let him hurt you." "That's insane. That's—" Her voice broke. "Don't ever do that again." "I can't promise that." She grabbed his shirt, pulled him down, kissed him hard. Desperate. Grateful. Alive. He responded immediately, hands in her hair, kissing her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard, foreheads touching. "We need to look at the compass," Alejandro said reluctantly. "Right. The mission. Always the mission." Zariyah set the compass on a table. Her birthmark activated it again, the hologram expanding larger this time. Her father's face appeared, life-size, speaking, and what he revealed would change everything they thought they knew. James Williams' hologram filled the warehouse with blue light and a father's voice Zariyah thought she'd never hear again. "Zariyah, baby girl, if you're watching this, I'm gone, and I'm so sorry." Her knees weakened. Alejandro steadied her, his arm around her waist, keeping her upright while her world tilted. "I knew Enzo Salvatore was planning to kill me. I had evidence of everything. His trafficking operations, his murders, his corruption network spanning 3 continents. I was days away from bringing him down." The hologram shifted, showing documents, photos, evidence that made Zariyah's stomach turn. Children's faces, women's faces. People bought and sold like commodities. But I made a mistake. I trusted the wrong person in my own agency. Someone working for Enzo. They told him about my investigation, about the evidence I'd compiled, and about you. Zariyah's hands clenched into fists. "I couldn't let him get to you. You're all I have left of your mother. You're everything good I've ever done in this world. So I made a choice. I contacted the one person I knew could keep you safe." The hologram showed a photo. Her father with Alejandro. Both in casual clothes, sitting in a cafe, looking like unlikely friends. Alejandro Salvatore. Il Ombra. The Shadow. Everyone thinks he's a criminal. He's not. He's been working with me for 3 years, using his resources to take down trafficking. Rings across Europe. We've saved over 2,000 lives together. He's a good man trapped in a bad family, trying to make things right. Beside her, Alejandro's breath caught. He hadn't known James had documented their partnership. If you're watching this with him, and I know you are because he gave me his word, then he's kept his promise. He's protected you. Thank you, Alejandro, for everything. The hologram zoomed in on James's face. Older, tired, but determined. Zariyah, everything in this compass is for you. 500 million euros in offshore accounts. Money I seized from Enzo's operations over the years. Money that belonged to his victims. Use it to finish what I started. Build something good from all this darkness. The evidence will bring Enzo to justice. The coordinates will lead you to safe houses where you can hide if necessary. And the biometric lock tied to your birthmark means only you can access it all. He paused, emotion crossing his face. There's one more thing you need to know. The person who betrayed me, their name is in these files. When you see it, you're going to be shocked, hurt. But you need to know the truth. The hologram shifted, showing a personnel file, FBI credentials, a face Zariyah recognized. Marco Russo. No, she whispered. Marco Russo, FBI agent, undercover with Enzo's organization for 6 years. He went too deep. Enzo got leverage. Marco's sister, threatened with death if he didn't cooperate. Marco chose his family over mine. He's the one who told Enzo about my investigation, about you. The warehouse spun. Marco, her friend, the man who'd helped her survive. He'd gotten her father killed. I don't hate him for it, James continued, his voice heavy with understanding. Love makes us do impossible things. He chose his sister's life over his mission. I can't fault him for that, even though it cost me mine. By the time you see this, Marco will probably try to help you. Let him. He's been eaten alive by guilt for 6 months. Give him a chance to make it right. The hologram began to fade. I love you, baby girl. I'm so proud of who you've become. And I'm sorry I couldn't be there for all the moments I'll miss. But you have Alejandro now. Trust him. He'll keep you safe. He'll help you finish this. And maybe... A small smile crossed James's face. Maybe you've realized that protection isn't the only thing he offers. The hologram flickered one last time. Finish what I started. Save the people I couldn't save. And Zariyah, be happy. Your mother and I never wanted anything more than your happiness. Don't let revenge steal that from you. Then he was gone. The warehouse returned to darkness. Zariyah stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. Alejandro held her while she shook, while 6 months of grief and rage and exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. Marco, she finally managed. He killed my father. He betrayed him, Alejandro corrected gently. Enzo pulled the trigger. Marco just gave him the gun. Is there a difference? I think your father believed there was. He turned her to face him. James forgave him. Can you? I don't know. Zariyah wiped her eyes roughly. But he saved us tonight, at Enzo's vault. He shot his own people to let us escape. Why would he do that if he's working for Enzo? Maybe your father was right. Maybe Marco's trying to make up for what he did. A noise outside made them both freeze. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. Alejandro moved for his gun. Zariyah grabbed the knife from her boot. The warehouse door opened. Marco stood there, blood on his shirt, exhaustion on his face, hands raised in surrender. Please, I can explain. You have 2 minutes, Zariyah said coldly, blade ready. Then I decide if you live or die. Marco stepped inside slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. When he saw the compass, saw the hologram's residual light, his face crumpled. You know that you betrayed my father? That you got him killed? Yes, I know. Zariyah's voice was ice over fury. Start talking. I was deep undercover. 6 years embedded in Enzo's organization. I'd gotten close, so close to bringing down his entire network. But Enzo is paranoid. He investigates everyone. He found my sister, Maria. She's a teacher in Sicily, has 2 kids, a good life. Marco's voice broke. Enzo sent me photos of her children, with a message. Cooperate or watch them die. So you chose them over my father. I chose my family over my mission. Marco met her eyes, not flinching from the judgment there. James was my friend, my mentor. He trained me, believed in me, and I betrayed him because Enzo gave me an impossible choice. There's always a choice, Zariyah spat. Is there? What would you have done? Let your family die to save someone else's? Could you have made that call? When Zariyah didn't answer, Marco continued. I tried to warn James, tried to tell him Enzo knew, but Enzo moved faster than I expected. By the time I realized what was happening, James was already dead. Why help us tonight? Because I've been living with what I did for 6 months. Every day, every hour. The guilt is eating me alive. Marco's eyes were desperate. When I saw you at that dinner, saw you with Alejandro, I knew what you were planning. I couldn't let it happen again. Couldn't let Enzo kill another Williams while I stood by and did nothing. So you shot your own people. They're not my people. They never were. I've been playing both sides for months, feeding Enzo false information, protecting you from the shadows alongside Alejandro. Tonight was just the first time I had to choose sides publicly. Alejandro spoke for the first time. Your phone. Enzo said he'd been tracking it. He was. But I've been feeding him exactly what I want him to know. Marco pulled out his phone, turned it off, pulled the battery. Everything he's learned from me for the past month has been calculated misdirection. Why should we believe? You? Zariyah demanded. Because I have information you need. About Enzo's next move. About his plans for both of you. And about the mole inside Interpol who's been protecting him for years. Marco's voice turned urgent. Enzo knows about the compass now. Knows you have it. He's planning to disappear, leave Italy, liquidate assets, vanish into South America where he has connections. If we don't move in the next 48 hours, he'll be gone forever. How do we know you're not leading us into another trap? You don't. You have to trust me. I know I haven't earned that. I know what I did is unforgivable. But your father's message said to give me a chance. Will you? Zariyah looked at Alejandro. He shrugged. Your call. She thought of her father's words, thought of Marco's sister and her children, thought of impossible choices and the weight of guilt. She thought of mercy and vengeance, and which one her father would choose. One chance, she said finally. One wrong move, Marco, and I will kill you myself. Not Alejandro, me. Understood? Understood. Relief flooded his face. Then tell us everything. What's Enzo planning? For the next hour, Marco detailed Enzo's operations. The safe houses, the escape routes, the corrupt officials who'd help him disappear. The timeline, 48 hours before he vanished forever. They built a plan, risky, complicated, requiring the 3 of them to work together despite everything. We need to bring him down publicly, Zariyah said. Not just kill him. My father wanted justice, not revenge. We expose everything, the trafficking, the murders, the corruption. We make sure Enzo can never hurt anyone again. Prosecutor Ricci, Alejandro suggested. He's been building a case against the Salvatores for years. If we give him everything in that compass, he'll have enough to arrest Enzo and everyone connected to him, Marco finished. But we need to deliver it in person. Need to make sure it gets to the right hands. And we need to do it before Enzo realizes what we're planning, Zariyah added. They worked through the night, finalizing every detail. By dawn, they had a strategy. Dangerous, bold, possibly suicidal, but it was their only shot. As the sun rose over Naples, painting the warehouse golden, Zariyah looked at the two men who'd become her unlikely allies. Alejandro, who'd loved her from the shadows. Marco, who'd betrayed her father but was trying to earn redemption. "My father spent his life saving people," she said quietly. "Tomorrow, we finish what he started. We save everyone Enzo would have hurt. We give victims their justice. And we make sure my father didn't die for nothing." "To James Williams," Alejandro said. "To second chances," Marco added. "To finishing this," Zariyah concluded. They had 24 hours until Enzo disappeared. 24 hours to pull off the impossible. 24 hours to bring down a mafia empire or die trying. The end game had begun. The plan was simple in theory, deadly in execution. They would lure Enzo out of hiding using the one thing he wanted more than escape, the compass. Marco would send a message claiming he'd captured Zariyah and recovered the device. Enzo would come personally, unable to resist claiming his prize. And when he did, they'd have Prosecutor Ricci waiting with an army and arrest warrants. Simple. Except for the 100 ways it could go wrong. "He won't come alone," Marco said, mapping Enzo's likely approach on a tablet. "He'll bring 20 men minimum, all armed, all loyal. They'll sweep the location for traps." "Then we make it convincing," Alejandro countered. "Real enough that Enzo believes he's won." They chose an abandoned factory on Naples' outskirts. Enough space for the trap. Enough exits if things went sideways. Enough sightlines for Ricci's teams to position snipers. Zariyah would be the bait. "Absolutely not," Alejandro said when she proposed it. "There has to be another way." "There isn't. Enzo wants me. He'll only come if he thinks he's getting me." She met his eyes steadily. "I can handle this. Your father asked me to keep you safe. My father asked me to finish what he started. This is how we do it." She softened. "I trust you. You'll be there. You'll make sure nothing happens." "What if I can't? What if something goes wrong and I can't get to you in time?" "Then you finish the mission anyway. You give Ricci the compass. You make sure Enzo goes down." She took his face in her hands. "Promise me. If it comes down to choosing between saving me and completing the mission, you choose the mission." "I can't." "Promise me, Alejandro." He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. "I love you. You know that, right? This stopped being about a promise to your father weeks ago. It's about you, about us." "I know. I love you too. That's why you have to promise." "I promise I'll do everything in my power to make sure we both survive." How's that? Frustratingly vague. But she smiled through tears. Good enough. They spent the day preparing. Ricci's teams moved into position. 30 officers, 10 snipers, 2 extraction vehicles. Marco coordinated with his remaining FBI contacts, ensuring federal agents would be ready to move the moment Enzo was in custody. And Zariyah? She memorized every exit, every weapon cache, every contingency plan. If this went wrong, she'd be ready. As twilight fell, Marco sent the message. "Have the girl. Compass secured. Warehouse 7, Port District. Come alone." Enzo's reply was immediate. 1 hour. The warehouse felt cavernous as they took positions. Zariyah center stage, hands bound with theatrical rope that she could break in seconds. The compass on a table beside her, the real one, because Enzo would verify. Marco in the shadows, playing his role of loyal soldier. Alejandro hidden in the rafters with a sniper rifle, watching over her. And outside, Ricci's teams waiting for the signal. 60 minutes felt like 6 hours. Then, headlights, vehicles approaching. Enzo had brought an army, 5 cars, at least 20 men. Marco's voice crackled in the hidden earpiece. Stay calm. Stick to the plan. We've got you. The warehouse doors opened. Enzo entered like a king claiming his throne, Joseph beside him, guards fanning out in practiced formation. His eyes locked on Zariyah immediately. Well, the FBI brat. James Williams' daughter. You've caused me quite a bit of trouble. Zariyah lifted her chin, defiant even with bound hands. My father caused you trouble. I'm just finishing what he started. Brave words for a captured girl. Enzo approached the compass, picked it up reverently. This little device. So much power in such a small package. Your father was clever, I'll give him that. Hiding everything in plain sight, protected by biometric locks only his daughter could open. Too bad you'll never access it. Oh, I don't need to access it. I just need to destroy it. He smiled. Along with you. Can't have loose ends. You won't get away with this, won't I? I've gotten away with it for 30 years. What's one more body? That was the signal. Lights flooded the warehouse. Ricci's voice boomed through megaphones. Enzo Salvatore, you're surrounded. Drop your weapons and surrender. Chaos exploded. Enzo's men drew guns. Ricci's officers stormed in. Zariyah broke her restraints, dove for cover. Alejandro's rifle cracked from above, taking down threats before they could reach her. But Enzo moved fast, grabbed Zariyah before she could fully escape, gun to her head. Back off, he screamed. Back off or she dies. Everything froze. Ricci's teams, Alejandro in the rafters, Marco emerging from shadows. Let her go, Alejandro's voice echoed from above, calm but deadly. This is over. It's over when I say it's over. Enzo's gun pressed harder against Zariyah's temple. Drop your weapons, or I paint this warehouse with her brains. Zariyah met Alejandro's eyes across the distance, saw the calculation there, the impossible choice. Save her or complete the mission. She made the choice for him. With a move her father taught her at 16, she dropped, twisted, drove her elbow into Enzo's gut. His gun went off, bullet missing her by inches. She rolled, came up with a weapon she'd hidden, aimed at Enzo's chest. But before she could fire, Marco was there, gun raised, pointed at Enzo. For James, Marco said quietly. He shot. Non-lethal. Shoulder. Enzo went down screaming. Officers swarmed, handcuffing, arresting, reading rights. It was over. Alejandro reached Zariyah in seconds, pulled her into his arms, checking for injuries. Are you hurt? Did he? I'm fine. I'm okay. She was shaking but whole. Ricci approached, satisfaction on his face. Enzo Salvatore, you're under arrest for human trafficking, murder, racketeering, and about 30 other charges. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison. As officers dragged Enzo away, he looked back at Zariyah one last time. Your father died screaming your name. And you'll die knowing you lost, she replied coldly, that everything you built is gone, that my father won. Then he was gone. Joseph, too. Marco handed himself over to Ricci willingly, ready to face justice for his part in everything. But before they took him, he approached Zariyah one last time. I'm sorry. For everything. Your father was a good man, and I got him killed. Nothing I do will ever make that right. You saved my life tonight. That has to count for something. Tell my sister. Tell Maria I tried to be better, that I died trying to make it right. You're not going to die. You're going to serve time, pay your debt, and maybe, eventually, earn forgiveness. She surprised herself by meaning it. My father forgave you. I think eventually I can too. Marco's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. They took him away, not to prison, but to protective custody while he testified against every corrupt official he knew. Ricci turned to Zariyah. The compass. Everything your father compiled. It's enough to dismantle trafficking networks across 3 continents. His work will save thousands of lives. That's what he wanted. That's why he died. He'd be very proud of you. Zariyah's throat tightened. Thank you for helping us finish this. Thank you for giving us the evidence to do it. As Ricci's teams processed the scene, Alejandro pulled Zariyah outside into the cool night air, away from the chaos, into the quiet. You terrified me, he said, holding her tight. When Enzo had that gun to your head, I know, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be safe. Be alive. That's all I need. She pulled back to look at him. This complicated man who'd protected her from shadows, who'd loved her through danger, who'd kept his promise to her father. What happens now? She asked. Now? Now we decide what comes next. The mission's over. Enzo's arrested. Your father's work is finished. He traced her face gently. Our contract was for 1 year. We're only 3 weeks in. Alejandro, stay. Not because of a contract. Not because you're in danger. Stay because you want to. Because this... He gestured between them. This is real. At least it is for me. It's real for me too. She rose on her toes, kissed him softly. I'm not going anywhere. Good. Because I have plans. Plans? The 500 million your father left you. I have ideas for how to use it. We, she corrected. How we use it. We. He smiled. I like the sound of that. They drove home through Naples' awakening streets as dawn painted the city gold. The nightmare was over. Justice was served. And for the first time in 6 months, Zariyah Williams felt something she'd thought impossible. Hope. 6 months passed like a dream. The James Williams Foundation launched on the anniversary of his death. Zariyah stood on stage in front of 200 people, survivors, FBI colleagues, families of victims, and spoke about her father, about his mission, about finishing what he started. My father believed one person could make a difference. He died proving it. This foundation exists because he refused to look away from suffering, because he chose justice over safety, because he loved people more than he feared consequences. In the front row, an empty chair with her father's photo. Beside it, Alejandro, watching her with pride. And behind him, faces of people they'd saved. 22 victims in 6 months. Lives reclaimed, futures restored. The work isn't finished. It never will be. But every person we help, every family we reunite, every life we save, that's my father's legacy. That's what he died for, and that's what we'll keep fighting for. The applause was thunderous. After the speech, a young girl approached. 16, scared but trying to be brave. You were homeless once? She asked quietly. Zariyah knelt to her level. I was. For 6 months. And now you're this? Now I'm someone who helps people like us. You're safe now. No one will hurt you again. I promise. The girl hugged her. Zariyah held tight, blinking back tears, thinking of her father, of how far she'd come, of the life she'd built from ashes. 3 months later, wedding bells. Small ceremony in a church overlooking Naples Bay. The rescued victims filled the pews. Prosecutor Ricci attended. Marco sent a letter from prison, full of gratitude and blessings and hope for redemption. Zariyah wore simple white lace, her mother's compass around her neck, her father's FBI pin attached to her bouquet. Alejandro stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored suit, her father's pin matching on his lapel, united in honoring the man who'd brought them together. Their vows were promises earned through fire. "You bought me for 50,000 euros, Zariyah said, voice steady despite tears. "Worst investment you ever made." Laughter rippled through the church. "Because I cost you your secrets, your safety, probably years off your life from stress. But I gave you something too, my trust, my heart, my future. You were supposed to be my enemy. You became my home. I promised to wake up every day grateful that you were brave enough to protect me, smart enough to love me, strong enough to let me be strong too." Alejandro spoke without notes, voice rough with emotion. "I've been many things in my life. A Salvatore, a criminal, Il Ombra, the shadow. But the only identity that matters is the one you gave me. Yours. You made me want to be better, made me believe I could be better. Your father trusted me with his most precious treasure. I promised to spend every day earning that trust, to protect you, to partner with you, to love you exactly as you are, fierce, stubborn, impossible, and mine." The priest smiled. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may—" Alejandro was already kissing her. She was already kissing back. It was joyful, passionate, the kiss of two people who'd found each other in darkness and chosen light. Together. At the reception, they danced close. "Have I mentioned today that you're beautiful? Only 17 times. Not enough." She laughed. "Your math is concerning. Your face is concerning. Concerningly perfect." "That was terrible." "I know. Marry me anyway." "I just did. Marry me again tomorrow." She pulled him closer. "Deal." Later that evening, Zariyah pulled Alejandro aside, nervous and excited. "I have something to tell you." His face showed immediate concern. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's perfect, maybe too perfect." She took his hands, placed them on her still flat stomach. "We're pregnant." His face transformed through shock, joy, wonder. You're a baby?" She nodded, crying happy tears. He lifted her, spinning carefully, both laughing and crying. When he set her down, he immediately dropped to his knees, pressed his forehead to her belly. "Hi," he whispered to their child. "I'm your father. I'm probably going to be terrible at this, but your mother is incredible. I promise to love you as much as I love her, which is more than I thought possible." Zariyah ran her fingers through his hair, overwhelmed with gratitude for this life she'd built. From homeless to home, from hunted to loved, from surviving to thriving. 5 years later, their daughter swung between them on a Naples street. "Tell me the story again, Mama." "Which story, baby?" "How you and Papa met." Zariyah and Alejandro exchanged amused looks. "Your father bought your mother at an auction," Alejandro said honestly. Their daughter's eyes went wide. "Like at a store?" "Something like that." "And then you fell in love?" "Eventually." "And got married?" "Eventually." "And then I was born." "Exactly. That's a good story." They walked off together toward the foundation building where 20 staff members now worked full-time. 2,000 lives saved in 5 years, 15 countries, dozens of trafficking rings dismantled. A legacy built on James Williams' sacrifice and his daughter's determination. In her office, Zariyah kept 3 photos, her mother, her father, and Marco, recently released from prison, now teaching at-risk youth about the consequences of corruption. Redemption was possible. Her father had believed that. That night, tucking their daughter into bed, Zariyah whispered a prayer to parents she'd never stopped missing. "We did it, Dad. Just like you asked. We finished it." In her dreams, James Williams smiled and said he was proud. Because sometimes the worst purchases become the best investments. Sometimes terrible beginnings lead to beautiful endings. Sometimes the person who buys you for 50,000 euros becomes the person you'd choose for free every single time. From auction to forever. From enemy to everything. From 50,000 euros to priceless. And this is just the beginning, because Zariyah and Alejandro's daughter would grow up strong, would learn her grandfather's legacy, would maybe one day meet someone equally impossible at an equally unlikely moment. But that's a story for another time. For now, this story ends where it should, with love, with justice, with a family built from broken pieces into something beautiful, with a homeless girl who became a queen, a shadow who stepped into light, and a promise kept to a man who believed one person could change the world. James Williams was right. One person can make all the difference, especially when that person is loved. I love you. Thank you for watching. See you in my next one.